I did a TV commercial for the Matildas. You've got thousands of followers. Do you want to go travel New Zealand? I got the chance to go over to India and work on a Bollywood feature. Safety regulations were not the same thing over there.
Hello everyone and welcome back to the Scrollstop podcast. My name is Tom and I'm the director here at Scrollstop, and today I'm with a cinematographer fresh off their first feature, and that is Rishi. Say hi, Rishi.
Hey, how's it going? Oh, hey, how's it going?
Yeah, great. Thanks for coming on. So today we're going to be covering all of his experiences recently working on that project and all the projects he's worked on in the past. Hi Rishi, thanks for coming down. Thanks for coming on to the podcast. Could you just introduce yourself to our viewers and let us know what you do?
So my name's Rishi. Hunte. I'm a cinematographer and shooter producer based in Sydney, Caddy lands. And I do a lot of work in the music videos space, short films, and then heaps of corporate to kind of keep me busy, pay my bills. As you mentioned, I've shot a feature earlier this year, so kind of moving into a bigger space with that.
Awesome.
I guess that's it. Yeah.
No, that's great. How'd you get into cinematography? Like where did you start?
Okay, so I actually didn't really start in cinematography. I started kind of found my love for film when I was traveling the world. Just after leaving school, I spent 14 months hitchhiking around the world.
Oh, wow.
And kind of fell in love with oral storytelling, sharing stories of my own, hearing stories from other people, just like across the planet. I fell in love with just this idea of storytelling, started writing my own stories. And then I applied to AFTRS with a few of the stories that I'd written and got in. AFTRS is the National Film School for people who don't know. I got in there and kind of worked my way up in the industry from there and around the industry, down in the industry, sort of every which way.
Yeah, of course.
That kind of takes me to where I am now. I think I'm sort of driven by three things. First is the love of story. Mm-hmm. Second is purpose. I like my work to be driven by some sort of ethical compass. And then third is the unfortunate reality of having to make a living. Yeah,
it's the worst part of our career, isn't it?
Yeah. If we could just scrap that, that'd be great. But no, it's all just what you have to do. And ideally it's a combination of all three, but you don't always get that.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of those three things and sort of negotiating that constantly.
Yeah, definitely. And I did a little bit of research on some of your past projects, and I noticed the Olympics was in that list.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
What did you work on for them?
That's a random one. So I didn't actually go over there. It was for the Tokyo Olympics.
Okay.
But I was... I did a TV commercial for the Matildas.
Oh yeah, that's a small name drop there.
Yeah. You know those
those people.
That little football team. No,
football team.
I did a TV commercial for the Matildas before they were sort of as massive as they were after the Women's World Cup, and that was for the Matildas goalkeeper at the time, who was Lydia Williams.
Right.
And that aired around Australia, kind of built a lot of hype around Australia.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
It's such a unique opportunity.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah. What other sort of projects have you worked on?
I've done work across a few different fields. I've actually won awards in podcasting, in documentary,
wow,
and then in cinematography. A couple different things. But I guess the most interesting sort of jobs that I've been on when I was very early stage career, I got the chance to go over to India and work on a Bollywood feature.
Oh wow, that would have been amazing.
It was so wonderful. I think I see it as a very it was kind of a career defining moment for me. It was where I really fell in love with cinematography and where I fell in love with lighting. Actually, like I was working in the lighting team mostly on that one.
Okay.
I say mostly because I jumped around roles a little bit. I was there shadowing the DOP, but at some point the second AD broke his nose and I had to fill in for him for a while. I'd never really AD'd outside of a film school context, so that was fun.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, that's probably the one that I jump to whenever I think of an experience that's been truly sort of life-changing for me and exciting and fun. And it's funny because it's sort of was very early career for me.
I mean, great way to kick off the career, right? Straight into the deep end. I've heard that those productions can be quite chaotic, right?
Oh, totally chaotic. Yeah, I was there like day one. There were people like climbing on scaffolding without any sort of harnesses, just like reaching out over the edge of the scaffolding to like grab a light and twist it around, pan it around. You know, it was very safety regulations were not the same thing over there. Like we saw stunt performers get thrown through breakaway walls and just like the whole set had to stop for a moment because, you know, this person's injured their back and we didn't have backup stunt performers. So we had to kind of go again. It was like, oh God.
We get it, you're broken, but also can we like reset please?
yeah. Clock's ticking, money's burning.
Oh my God, that would have been an amazing experience. Wow.
It was wonderful. And then I've done a few other things. Another big one, sort of another big career defining moment was going to New Zealand. Mm-hmm. I did a big sort of, I guess you could call it a travel blog of New Zealand when I was a bit younger, because a friend of mine ran a Lord of the Rings Facebook page.
Okay.
And it was
good
actually
start.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
He ran this Lord of the Rings Facebook page for years. He'd actually like created the page just after The Hobbit was released.
Okay, wow.
And he was there before Warner Brothers were. So it gathered a lot of attention and it ended up being like the biggest Middle-earth fan page on Facebook.
Wow, that's a bold claim as well.
Yeah. I mean, unofficial one, of course, but yeah, the biggest on Facebook. So it was, and Facebook was the thing at the time. It wasn't really Instagram. So it really took off and I sort of came on to be like, look, what are we going to do with this? You've got thousands of followers. Do you want to go make some films, go travel New Zealand? Like we wrote to hundreds of different companies all around the place and eventually sort of, got this trip to New Zealand out of it. We weren't really being paid for that one, but we did get everything complimentary. Like we had car for the entire time. We had all of these like amazing experiences thrown at us. We got to go to Hobbiton, you know, go through the caves and everything. So yeah, that was another amazing one. And then of course, recently shooting this feature is another big career defining moment. And I'm sure we'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll hold off on that just for a little bit because I wanted to ask about some of those awards that you mentioned earlier. So you mentioned there was an ACS award that you won recently?
I did.
Recently? When was that?
That was last year, I believe. Yeah.
Okay, what was that for?
That was for just a little music video that I shot. I actually designed my own lens for it.
Oh, wow.
So it was, I kind of pulled apart bits of this old lens that I found in an op shop broken in like a few years ago. And then I 3D printed a sort of housing for this new lens that I'd pieced together. And the results were kind of fun and, you know, very different to sort of a lot of things that are.
Yeah, I was going to say that'd create a really unique image, right?
Yeah. It was quite an interesting lens. Like there's a lot of distortion and vignetting and really, really soft focus. So it was like, it's not for everything, but it was a fun look for a music video, especially. So it was like, it's nice to,
Yeah, no, that'd been awesome. I feel like music video is one of those sort of genres where you can just get a bit crazy with it and experiment with your techniques, which is really cool. Moving on to misgivings, I noticed in the press kit that you mentioned that you're using an A7S III for most of the shooting for that, right?
Yeah, I was actually, yeah.
So what drove that choice? Was that like the just gear that you had on hand, or did you find it was the best tool for the job? Like, why was that the decision?
Well, it was kind of a combination of things. So I think the biggest thing for me was flexibility and just being able to, show up somewhere, set up a shot in a matter of minutes, because I don't have to, lug all this heavy gear around. It's just one camera, and I was shooting shoulder rig a lot of the time. And then when I wasn't doing that, it's just like my tiny little carbon fiber tripod. Actually, no, it's not carbon fiber. But, a tiny little tripod for a tiny little camera. And so the flexibility of it was something that I really loved, and it's still 10-bit 422 color. So sorry to get a little camera nerdy for those who don't understand, but it's a beautiful image, and with a bit of grading, you can do the same things as the higher end cinema cameras. And I do actually own an Arri Alexa that I chose not to shoot on for this one, just because it was going to be cheaper and more flexible to shoot on. But yeah,
absolutely. I've noticed that there's that's a big discussion, I feel, in the industry at the moment, the place of the mirrorless cameras as they're getting better and better compared to cinema cameras. There was a recent debate about the use of the FX3 in that sci-fi film The Creator.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one everyone's talked about, but I'm seeing more and more these sort of compact cinema cameras that are prosumer, as labeled by the esteemed professionals, being used for bigger projects. How do you think that sort of transition is going to take place moving forward? Do you think they're going to have bigger place in features, or are you thinking that the bigger cameras are still sort of reserved for that field?
Yeah, well, I think that the bigger cameras do sort of still serve their job. I mean, even the Alexa Mini is a pretty tiny bit of kit now. It's obviously oftentimes rigged out to something pretty massive. A lot of the time, the lenses, you can't go anything smaller than a big chunky, cinema lens.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that especially in the lower budget sort of space, we're going to see a lot more of it, just because it makes a lot more sense. If you don't have a huge budget to spend, it does seem like a bit of a waste throwing that all at the camera department, because you can get a very similar looking image now. And I'm pretty proud of what I shot on this film with the kit that I had, which was very limited. Obviously, it would have been better to have the techno cranes, the steady cams, the easy rigs, the dollies. We didn't really have any of that. We shot most of it just on sticks and then shoulder rig. But I think in the end, what really matters is that you're kind of doing service to the story, and that you're doing what you can with those tools to make the image as beautiful as possible.
Yeah, definitely. I'm big with this mirrorless sort of side of things. I think there's great potential, and it matters more what you put in front of the camera than what you do into the camera itself when it comes to at least the smaller budget sort of indie scene. I found that if you focus your time on creating a professional looking image in front, rather than worrying about all the very, technical specs of the body that you're using, you can often get an image that, is comparable, or, it can compete with the high quality cinema cameras if you're working on that lower budget. It's great. So on the topic of misgivings, what's the timeline of that film? Is that currently in post, or is that where's that sitting at the moment?
Yeah, it's currently in post.
Okay, great.
And I've seen a little bit of a first draft, but I haven't seen the full thing yet. So sort of excited to see what happens with it.
Yeah, and are you happy with the rushes and everything? It's all looking good?
The rushes, yeah, I'm pretty happy with. And I've had a chance to bring a few of them into the grade and have a look at it with a bit of a grade as well. So yeah, I think that in the end we'll be left with something pretty nice.
Yeah, no, that's super exciting. Were there any challenges on that set? Did you find were there any moments where you're like, ooh, I don't know if this is going to work, or it's struggling here, anything like that?
Yeah, to be honest, yes, there were. But I mean, with any micro budget feature, there are challenges, and that's just something that you have to contend with when you don't have budget, when you don't have, we didn't even have a production designer on this one.
Okay.
So it was every day me and my gaffer would take all of the lamps from the Airbnb that we were staying in and, decorate the space that we were in for that day with practical lamps.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was challenging. I think the entire thing from beginning to end was challenging, but that is filmmaking as well.
Yeah.
Like making films is never easy, especially when there's no budget to do anything. So you have to come up with all these creative compromises. And you have to find a bit of a flow and then just make whatever you have work.
Yeah, it's very much a problem-solving exercise. When, like, as the budget gets smaller, you really have to be more and more inventive with how you achieve the look that you want to go for and everything like that. Hey.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So you're saying that you are transitioning sort of more into features now. Is that sort of where you want to go with your career? Is that where you sort of see it ending up?
Yeah, I'm hoping to transition more into features as well as into the sort of higher end commercial environment as well. I think mostly because working on a feature, you get a totally different sense of satisfaction once it's completed. Like, you're not making a short that might see a couple of film festivals and then end up on YouTube where half the time they don't even really get watched.
Too real. Too real.
Yeah. But, working on a feature, you're with a group of people for a very decent amount of time, usually a very decent amount of time. If you're unlucky, it's a really short amount of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And once you get to the end of that process, you have something that is far more complete. You have something that is able to be distributed to cinemas that people can come and watch for an hour and a half, and for that hour and a half, all they are looking at is your work. And there is something kind of special about that. Like, there's no sort of programming in the same way for short films. It's like there's no short film festival where they just go, look, I'm going to play your short film on repeat for an hour and a half.
Yeah. You can't capture the audience's attention so vividly, right? It's sort of just like, it's
exactly.
always either with a larger program of films or, something like that, where it's less intimate, I feel, with the audience. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, in a short film, usually there's only so much time for character arcs and development, and for a story to actually completely take place. It's more of just a vignette. So I think there is some sort of satisfaction in completing a full story.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a sort of dream project that you have in mind when it comes to this? So, looking at features, would you like to do a big sci-fi film or action or, a real good romance? Like, what's your sort of vision forward?
I think that for a while, my ambition was to go to India and work in Bollywood, just because I love the spectacle of Bollywood films.
Yeah.
They're always just, action, dance scenes, and spectacle from beginning to end. It's just like everything exciting all at once. They're just constantly stimulating. And I think that's a lot of the time when we get into film, that's what we're imagining. And I think that I've settled down with that idea now of just needing constant stimulation from film sets, because that can be exhausting as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't think there's any sort of one project. I think it's more just following a good story, following good people, and working my way around that way.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like there's lots of room for that at the moment with everything that's going on, and more big productions sort of popping up in Sydney with like Fall Guy and that Mark Wahlberg one that's around the Dirty something. I feel like there's definitely room for things to pop up and surprises to hit. So hopefully something great comes up for you very soon. It'd be great. And just before we wrap up, I have one question I like to ask people. What's one thing you would like to tell your former self? So whether straight out of high school or, straight out of uni, what's one thing that you would tell, young Rishi?
Yeah, so I think that giving advice is difficult because there's no real correct way to do that. Advice can be interpreted in all sorts of ways, and it's not going to work for all people. But I think for myself, what I would have liked to hear from more people is that there is no correct path or pace. I think that, you know, the way that I've done things, the way that I've progressed in my career, I have sort of jumped up big rungs in the ladder, you know, jumping straight into this feature. I wasn't sure if I was ready for that. I think that I actually was, but, you know, I've jumped up that far to, you know, that degree, but then I've also jumped back down in some regards. Like I also go and do a lot of smaller roles on set. And I think that when I was younger and a little more ambitious, I was assuming it was all just sort of one clear, straight upwards sort of path. But I think that you have to humble yourself a little bit and just know that there are all sorts of different paths and they all work for what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's really good advice that a lot of young people sort of miss, that you don't have to be the CEO straight away.
Yeah.
Or, you know, directing, you know, your massive final film for your magnum opus right at the get-go.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways to get to where you want to go, and I feel like that's something that's really, I feel like that should be instilled more in different film schools and stuff. Like, you don't have to go for the end goal straight away. You can work a path there, and you can, often things that pop up will come up completely unexpectedly, and you sort of just need to ride that wave a bit. Hey.
Yeah, exactly. Especially like where I went to film school, I feel like everyone there was being trained to be directors and key creatives, and it is a bit of a shock when you come out of that and people are like, I don't know who you are, you know, I'm not going to give you any work.
I don't know who you are, I don't really care who you are.
Exactly.
So you got to prove that sort of the capability first.
Yeah, exactly. And once you do have a stronger body of work, it is, you know, better to go for the kind of work that you want to be doing. But then also there's always opportunities to be found elsewhere. Like you never know when work is around the corner. If you go do a smaller project for someone, they might call you up in a week's time and go, hey, I've got this big TV commercial that I want to shoot. Are you down, you know? Yeah,
no, definitely. I found even most recently, I was surprised by a friend who suddenly wanted me to edit a TV series out of doing a short, I color graded their short film at uni.
Yeah.
And then that progressed to editing a trailer for a feature, which then turned into, now editing the TV series, which is an insane progression from such a small thing at the start.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's how a lot of things come about with this industry. It's great.
Absolutely, yeah.
So say people did want to get in touch with you and offer you your next big project, how would they do so?
Yeah, okay. So say Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram, Rishi Hunte on Instagram. And website is Rishi Hunte as well, rishilahunt.com. And then that's probably the best two ways to contact me. I'd say Instagram. Like I generally respond to people on Instagram. Sometimes you'll fall through into the unseen inbox.
Yeah.
And I might not reply for a couple of weeks. But yeah, generally Instagram's a pretty good way to go about it.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, hopefully someone's been listening and likes your work and wants to throw you the next big piece. But until then, thanks so much for coming on. It was really great to chat to you.
Thanks, Tommy. It's been great. Thanks for having me on the pod.